Tim, good afternoon. As tradition dictates on Oppidan Talks, I'm going to give a very quick overview of the man in front of our screen, a former British number one, a 6-time Grand Slam semi-finalist, and really for many, the reason we all love tennis. Tim Henman is here, a true legend of the best game on the planet. An OBE to boot, nearly 100 Grand Slam wins to his name, and part of Wimbledon Forever, named in his honour. He is quite simply an iconic British sporting hero. Tim, thank you for joining us.
No problem at all. Pleasure. Good to see you guys.
It's great to have you on the show. Tim, we say this to everyone. For context, those who are listening, the average age of listener is about 12, 13, 14. And in a sort of linear manner, going back to when you were that old, was it obvious then that you knew you were going to pursue a career in tennis?
Yes, it was to me. I first started playing when I was 3. My mum first took me to Wimbledon when I was 6. And that was pretty much when I made my one and only career decision. I was lucky enough to see Bjorn Borg, who was a Swedish player that won Wimbledon 5 times. I saw him play at Wimbledon and saw him on centre court. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then around that age, 11 or 12, I got the opportunity of a tennis scholarship in London with David Lloyd, and went to Reed School in Cobham. And that's when, you know, my tennis, the hours that I was investing in my game really sort of took off. And yeah, it was the start of a very, very long journey, but an enjoyable one.
Can I ask, Tim, there must have been sacrifices you had to make educationally growing up. For those who want to follow sport as a passion, as a career, what would your advice be to them in handling their studies with their sport?
I do. I'm not just saying this. So I have 3 daughters who are 17, 15 and 12, and they're obviously, you know, in education now, dealing with the challenges of remote learning. But for me, it was a really important discipline of maintaining my studies, but also really trying to concentrate also on my tennis. And I was at school until 16, and I did my GCSEs. I got 8 GCSEs. I got an A, 4 Bs and 3 Cs that I was pretty chuffed with. And then I left school to really pursue my dream. But to maintain my studies, I always wanted to have some sort of qualifications if my tennis didn't work out. So it was important to me to make sure that I did the best I could within my schooling, but also, you know, really playing a lot of tennis as well.
And in the formative years of when you got the scholarship to Reeds, I know there are lots of Reeds.
We've had some shout outs for Reeds already, people saying, I'm at Reeds.
Yeah, good.
In those formative years, for context, we're a mentoring business. We believe in the power of mentoring, and every child, you know, should have a mentor growing up. Did you find you had a support system in place in terms of mentorship, or did you have coaches that believed in you? What was that like growing up?
Yeah, again, I totally agree with you. I think it's very important that people with experience can pass on their knowledge, because you know, at a young age, and at every age, to be fair, you've got a lot to learn. And so, you know, when I was 11 or 12 and I started to play more tennis, we played 6 days a week, 2 hours tennis after school every day. That coaching support was very important. But again, then we had to work both physically and mentally. So we were doing physical training as well. And you know, a little bit later on, I did a little bit of work with a psychologist, and she, I remember her telling me, and it's a good one to remember. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. And so that works both ways. So if you go out and practice bad habits, they'll become permanent. So it's very important that when you go out, whatever you're doing, you know, and this is in your studies or in life, if you ingrain good habits, they'll become permanent. So that's where it's important that if you can surround yourself with the right people, the right teachers, the right coaches, the right physical trainers, and ingrain good habits, it will make your life, your job much easier further down the line.
These guys watching have grown up cheering on Andy rather than Tim, I guess, whereas for us, it was always Tim. Perhaps you could walk us through a little bit of your Wimbledon experience through your career. What was it like handling that scrutiny, and what was the fun of playing at Wimbledon?
Yeah, it was my dream. And as I said, I first went there when I was 6 and knew that's what I wanted to do. And I think then The 15 years between a 6-year-old and then being 21 with my first opportunity to play on centre court, I felt, this is what I've been preparing for. So when I walked out onto centre court, I was playing Evgeny Kafelnikov, who was the French Open champion, first round in 1996. I just felt like this is what my life has been about. So I wasn't massively nervous. I felt very prepared, to go out there, try my best, give it my best shot, and enjoy it. And I think that is so important. And I ended up saving 2 match points. I won 7-5 in the 5th. And that really sort of my centre court journey and experience got me off on the right foot. And for me, if I could have played my whole career on one court, it would have been centre court at Wimbledon, because the support I had, the conditions, the surface, and playing at home, it was amazing. And I loved it. There is always going to be scrutiny, but again, it's important that you control the things that you can control. And that was all about my preparation and performance. I couldn't control what was being said on television or written in the newspapers, so I didn't pay any attention to it. I just concentrated on what I was trying to do, and I think that served me well.
You've had some epic wins in your career. My first memory of a tennis match was that middle Sunday in '97, when I think you saved a couple of match points and then you went on to win the game, and the atmosphere was electric. Where does that compare to perhaps your win against Roger Federer in your run in 2001? Yeah,
it's a great question, and it was you're quite right. 1997 was the middle Sunday, so it had a lot of rain in the tournament that year, and so it's very rare. It's only happened 3 times where the championships have used the middle Sunday, and it was purely the tennis fans that had queued. There were no tickets as such because we never played that day, so it was purely the fans that had queued overnight who got into the stadium, and I would say. That was the best atmosphere I ever played in. When we walked on the court, there was a Mexican wave. The atmosphere was just incredible. And as you say, I saved match point that day as well, and I won 14-12 in the 5th after about 4 hours. And so in terms of atmosphere, that was the best I ever played in. It wasn't necessarily the best tennis match, but in terms of, the atmosphere, it was incredible.
And then that Wimbledon 2001, you had the enormous high of beating Federer, who was on the rise, on the run. It was the end of the Pete Sampras era. For all those who are watching, he was, a king of the serve and volley. The semi-final then comes, and I know you're sick of answering questions about the Ivan Izevich game, but I have to take this selfishly opportunity to ask you. I remember it clearer than daylight. For those who don't remember, I think you were 2 points away from a final, and then the rain came down. Can you take us through that weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it was ended up being a pretty bizarre, pretty strange match. So we started on Friday, which is obviously when men's semis are played. We were the second match on that day, and Goran certainly started off better than I did. He won the first set 7-5. Went to a second set tiebreak, and he'd really been on top most of the match. But I found a way to win that second set. So instead of being, 2 sets to love down, I was 1 set all. And Goran could be a bit temperamental, could be a bit fragile, could go a bit crazy. And suddenly that gave me a big lift. And then he, struggled. And I won the third set. I think I won the third set in 14 minutes. I only lost 4 points. I won it 6-love. And we were on serve in the 4th set. I think I was up 2-1, Goran serving, and then it rained. So there was no more play that day. So I had to come back on the Saturday. And that really, it was frustrating because I felt like I had the momentum. But I've had endless matches in my career that have been delayed. And so, you deal with it. You go back home and you see your physio and do your stretching and whatever, and eat well, sleep well, come back the next day, start all over again. And that's what we did. Goran had better rhythm on his serve. The 4th set went with serve, went to a tie break, which Goran won. So we're into a 5th set. And again, it was on serve. I think Goran was 3-2 up with my serve about to come, and it started raining again. And this was obviously back in the day when there weren't roofs and you couldn't just shut the roof and get on with it. So it rained all day. We had to come back on Sunday, which is obviously normally the finals. And, you know, as it was, Goran got an opportunity, broke my serve and won 6-3 in the fifth. And it was bizarre because that final day, we only played for about 20 minutes. And normally there's a big build-up of tension, and you obviously exert a lot of energy, you play these long matches. We went out, played 20 minutes. He played a good game on my serve, won the match. And I remember getting back to the locker room. I'd obviously was aware that I'd just lost in a semi-final, which I had a great chance in. But I sat there sort of saying, is that it? You know, it was 20 minutes and we're done. And then definitely, you know, the coming sort of days, it sort of sunk in, hit home hard that, yes, in the 4-set tiebreak, I was 2 points away from making the Wimbledon final. But you know, there have been many matches that I could name where I had an interruption that benefited me, whereas, you know, there's no doubt that those rain delays benefited Goran.
I think kids should take note of that measured and calm, gracious approach to it. I think it's very important, whatever stage of life. Also, to come on to the mental side of things, in education with kids, we often compare sport with school time in terms of the balance between technical and mental. It's something which is spoken of a lot in professional tennis, where money should be invested, the technical, the mental, the emotional. Where do you think those elements play against each other, and how important do you rate this versus this?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's look, if you're going to play professional tennis at the highest level, you need to be good technically, you need to be good physically, and you need to be good mentally. There's no doubt you can't hide one of those areas, but certainly as I've you know, experienced the game and grown older and seeing players develop, the mental side is massively important. And again, I think there's some important words when you talk about confidence. You hear a lot of sportsmen and women talking about confidence. If you say to a young player, you know, what is it? Define confidence for me. I don't think they really understand. And it's important for them to know that confidence is the sum of your thoughts. It's your thoughts added together. But that can obviously go both ways, because if you stand there saying, oh, I can't beat him or her, and I can't do that, and I don't like this, and this surface is not so good, you're adding together a lot of negative thoughts. That's not doing you any good. So your confidence is going to be low. But if you're adding together a lot of positive thoughts, saying, I prepared well, I've worked hard, I'm going to go out there, I've got a clear strategy, this is the way that I want to play, I believe in myself, you're adding together a lot of good thoughts. And so it's something as simple as that can be very, very powerful. So to answer your question, you know, the mental side of things, you know, once you get to the, you know, higher and higher up the ladder, all these players are very, very good. But I think it can be, you know, the mental side of dealing with big points, difficult circumstances, dealing with adversity that separates, you know, the good from the great.
Sorry, Walter, before we move on to life after tennis, which I know has been big for you, can I ask, how do you think you'd fare in today's world of tennis? Because it's certainly changed a bit.
Yeah, I would have had to have adapted my game massively. You know, I was brought up playing indoor courts, fast courts, serving and volleying, you know, faster balls and lower bounce, and that doesn't exist anymore. So, and I think it's a bit of a shame. I think now, because the surfaces are much slower, the balls are heavier, you therefore get, you know, it's a little bit one-dimensional. You don't really see people coming to the net. So me trying to serve and volley in these conditions is going to be ugly. I'm not liking my chances. But again, I think, you know, when you're a good player, you adapt. I think the way that I learned to adapt my game on clay to, you know, I've never really played on clay growing up, but then to get to the semis of the French, you know, it's one of my proudest achievements. So you have to adapt, but no, certainly the way, the athletic ability, how hard the players hit the ball these days, how quick they are, you know, the game has progressed massively.
So you don't blame the groundsman Eddie Seawood for slowing the courts down in 2001?
No, 2002. 2002, the courts changed, and they went to 100% ryegrass. So ryegrass is a wide stemmed grass. It's much harder wearing. And I wouldn't have been my first choice, but I certainly now, I'm involved in the tournament. I'm on the committee. I'm involved with the BBC's commentary. The spectacle now is better than it's ever been. I think, late 90s, early 2000s, it was borderline becoming a serving competition. The average rally was sort of 3.5 shots. Now, when you see these players going 30, 35, 40 shots from the back of the court, more opportunities to come forward on a grass court, I think the spectacle is amazing.
We're going to come on to, Tim, we've got 5 or 6 minutes left, your life after tennis and commentating and that, but a kind of your take on the future of tennis once the big four, that's Federer, Nadal, Djokovic and Murray, move on. Where do you see tennis going in terms of the game, in terms of players, upcoming new exciting players? What's your take on that?
Yeah, there's no doubt that certainly 3, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, it's virtually impossible to fill their shoes because they are 3 of the greatest tennis players, so male or female, 3 of the greatest players of all time. Certainly, throw Murray into the mix with, a homegrown Wimbledon champion, winning 3 slams, 2 Olympic golds. What he's achieved is incredible. So it will be a difficult period to follow in their footsteps, but there's always a next generation coming through. And they haven't been able to break through, not because of lack of effort. It's just the reality that those 3, with Murray being out injured, those 3 are just better. They are just so good. And when you look at their Grand Slam tally, I think it's up to 56 or 57 between the 3 of them. I mean, it's incredible. That's never happened in any era. But, they will eventually retire and there will be the opportunities. And I certainly see, some exciting players coming through. And, Dominic Thiem's been knocking on the doors. Zverev has been a little bit up and down. Tsitsipas, has played some great tennis. Nick Kyrgios is one that certainly divides opinion, but I've got to know him a little bit off the court. He's helped me with my charity foundation, and he's a person with a great heart. There's a good person underneath it all, but he would admit he's made some bad decisions. So when you look at his tennis ability, he's definitely one of the most talented players out there. So I think there's plenty of stories, and one to look out from a British point of view. Jack Draper is a proper player. He's he's about 280 now in the men's game. He's really improving, getting fitter and stronger, and he's one for us Brits to look out for.
In terms of life after tennis for you, most of these kids watching will immediately go, "Oh my goodness, it's Tim from the BBC." And it's a very different life for you, obviously. Knowing that players find criticism hard, how did you find that transition to commentating and having to give criticism or give opinions?
Well, I mean, that's it, isn't it? It's only my opinion at the end of the day. So I'm entitled to my opinion, and that's me doing my job. So I think players, they probably don't hear or see so much of it, but, at the end of the day, I don't think really they have, too many problems with it. I don't do a massive amount of television. I've done BBC every year since I stopped playing in 2007, and I really enjoy all aspects of the event. Obviously, I'm involved in the tournament side as well, which is a lot of fun. And then I've also done some work on the tour with Prime, Amazon Prime Video, which has been a lot of fun. Did the US Open last year. So it's great to still be around the game, but you don't have the same discipline that goes with it. All the tournaments, the training, the travel, as I mentioned, with a young family. And, I like to be at home. I've traveled a lot in my tennis career. And that's one element that I don't miss is airports and aeroplanes. And, but again, I'm lucky that I still have a lot of other interests away from tennis to keep me busy.
Well, the kids and us are super psyched that you're here, and it's so interesting to listen to you speak about your career. And we have a quick fire round now, if that's all right. And then possibly a game of biscuit face, depending on if you have a biscuit. But we can talk about that later. The question
we've collated over 350 questions in the last 15 minutes. Wow. So I'm very sorry to everyone out there who doesn't get their question answered, but we've got a few of the good ones which I've noted down and some quick fire questions. So also, why don't you take us away?
So Tim, your favorite doubles partner, your favorite four-ball, as it were.
Roger Federer, Stefan Edberg and Bjorn Borg.
Favorite surface to play on?
Grass.
Your favorite tennis player?
Bjorn Borg.
Favorite stroke? That's a question from Hugo.
Backhand volley.
Your thoughts on Andy Murray's comeback?
I'm optimistic. He's got a long way to go. He's working incredibly hard, and I'd love to see him back competing at the top of the game.
Outside of Wimbledon, favorite place to play?
Indian Wells.
And your prediction for Wimbledon 2021 to finish?
Djokovic in the men's and Andreescu in the women's.
Fantastic. We could go on, but we've taken too much of your time already, Tim. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
We have a leaderboard here, and I hear you played golf with Mr. Shevchenko.
I did.
Mr. Shevchenko didn't manage to get biscuit face, but essentially we've been timing all our guests, and you've got a maximum of 30 seconds to try and get a biscuit from your forehead to your mouth without touching it. You can try several times if you want, but our advice would be not too much speed at the top. You kind of
right. Can I go and get it? Can I go and get biscuit?
Yeah, you absolutely can. I'll get my jammy dodger as well.
Hold on one second.
Whilst Tim goes and gets his biscuit and Henry gets his jammy dodger, get your biscuit from the kitchen. This is an absolutely epic moment in live TV history. We're going to take on Tim Henman at a game of biscuit face. And remember, I always say this, team, but when you're meeting new friends at university, the first line, you'll be at the bar, you're having some lemonade, and they'll say, tell me an interesting story. And you can say, I beat the famous Tim Henman at biscuit face. Okay, now I've got my shortbread, which is a bit of a rogue left field choice, but I ran out of digestives. No, I'm loyal to them, so I couldn't choose any other biscuit. So it is a big moment in biscuit face history. Who holds a record, Henry?
We've got a ridiculous record with a hobnob from the founder of Dash Water. That was 5.5 seconds. But we've got, some big names up there. Who have we got? Justin Rose didn't manage to complete it. Andrei Shevchenko did not manage to complete it. Sam Billings in 30 seconds. Got some other good people on here, some actors and actresses. So anyway, we'll see. Can Tim prove his worth at biscuit face? So it's just got to go from the forehead to the mouth, hands behind the back or wherever, then they're out of the way.
And how many seconds? How many times do you have? How many times can you go?
As many times as you want. Starting now.
Okay. The pressure.
It would be right not to go for a, come on, Tim.
How does this compare to a Wimbledon semi-final, Tim?
Oh, Jesus. I had it going. Got it to my eye.
My vein on my forehead comes out when I'm competing. Oh, no.
I'm afraid we're going to have to stop you there. The bad news is, Tim, you can't play biscuit face. Oh, no, he's done well. He's done well. It's all about the choice. Weirdly, a guy with a beard and a hobnob did best. But you've done very well. You've to eat your biscuit.
Take me a while to grow the beard.
You can sleep soundly at night knowing that 6 Grand Slam semi-finals will probably better biscuit face. But for those kids out there who've beaten you, and there are actually quite a lot coming in here. Let me just say, we've got Charlotte in 5 seconds. We've got Catherine who says 13. So well done everyone out there. But Tim, big thank you to you. You're very, very kind to join us today. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure, guys. Keep up the good work. And all the best in lockdown.
Thank you, Tim. See you very soon. Appreciate it. Goodbye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.